Good morning, Mr. Hogue.
Joshua Lehue, what up?
I think I'm going to start calling you Mr. Hogue. I like the way that sounds. I'm sure you do too.
Something other than Sean here before too long.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can't release any secrets yet.
Well,
how are you doing today?
Highness.
No, I'm going to go back to Sean. You've been demoted. You're back down to Sean.
Okay. I mean, that's better than most, so it's fine.
I mean, it's yeah. I'm just going to leave that there. Okay.
Move on.
So happy Friday. We have this is a show that I've really probably put, no offense to any previous guests, but I've probably put more thought into this show than I have the other ones, because I'm really, really excited about the conversation we're about to have. I know it's going to be an honest conversation, and I love those. Sean, one of the things that I said to Sean right after he started that I think was one of the favorite things of things that I've said is only honest feedback is appreciated. And so that's why I'm really looking forward to this conversation, because I love that idea that honest feedback, honest conversations are really how we all grow. And so we have with us today Brandon Wiley from OpenedEyes. So Brandon, Sean got kicked out, so it went to just my face. That was completely Sean getting booted out. There, he's back. Okay, Brandon, sorry for the confusion here. Good morning.
No problem. Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good. Sean, you're back.
Yeah. So you want to know some really awkward story? We're gonna go here. I went to bring Brandon into the conversation, and you know how on a Mac, if you like use two fingers and you swipe, it takes takes you back. That's what happened. So
yeah, you made me look really bad, because I said welcome Brandon, and then it went to my face only on the screen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sean.
No, it was totally my fault. It's fine.
So, Brandon, we're gonna see if we can how awkward we can make the intro. So I appreciate I appreciate you taking the time to be with us here this morning, man. We talked on the phone. I was saying before the show started that your name came up, hit my radar from a couple different angles here all at the same time, and I reached out, and you were very kind to have a conversation with me on the phone and join us on the show. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Thank you for reaching out. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we're going to start. Just tell us, for people that don't know you that might be watching today, give us a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about your organization, OpenedEyes, what your goals are, and what you're trying to do with that, man.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I want to say happy Juneteenth to everybody out there. You know, this is the 1865 when the enslaved African Americans in Galveston, Texas, were told that they were free. So we are in celebration, which is awesome.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, happy Juneteenth to everybody. So my stories, I'm originally from Sharon, PA. I came to Erie probably about 14 years ago. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and it's just been, it's been a journey. It's been a ride. And OpenedEyes is like this project that I started. It's like my baby, and I have to treat it as such. Growing up, I was always challenged on who I was because of my racial background. So people would always say, "What are you? You look different, but I don't know what you are." And so I went through this identity crisis growing up, and it was tough for me. It created a lot of dissonance. It created a lot of depression, anxiety. And that's actually what caught my interest in the mental health field. And that's why I became a licensed professional counselor. But as time went on, I began to think about, how can I use my experiences with my racial background to help others with their identity and help people become more comfortable with who they are. And so it took me a long time to get to that point. And it took me, when I came to Erie in college, it was one of those things where it took me a while to come into myself, because I always thought that I needed to take one side. This is my black side, so I need to act black, or this is my white side and I need to act white. And what does that even mean? Talking black, talking white, all of these things that I heard, and it just got to the point where it overwhelmed me. It made me feel like I said, less than. And then when I finally just accepted who I was as a person, and it took away a lot of that anxiety. It took away a lot of those feelings of not being accepted. And when you're just being you, that's the best version of yourself. And then from there you can grow. And that's what I decided to do with OpenedEyes. And it came to me actually in a dream. I was in grad school finishing up my program, and I had an idea about writing a book, and that's kind of like where this all stemmed from. And the book was called "What Are You?" And so the very question that I hated hearing growing up came to me in this vision that I should use it for something positive. I should use it for something more. And so I took that "What Are You" concept and I created, OpenedEyes. And, we are a diversity educational based program, not just focusing on diversity related issues, but, mindfulness based intervention, self-awareness. We discuss, leadership styles and development. So we cover, it's a multifaceted program. And so, we are able to take our elements that, we created and put them in different areas and towards different age groups. And so, it's very important to me. And especially during these times, especially this program is, like I said, it's my baby, and it's important for me to let this evolve and grow and to educate the masses.
That's awesome, man. Well, I appreciate that you took something that you heard in a dream and went out and actually put it into practice, because that's hard work. It's the dream happens, right? And then you got to decide whether you're going to dig in and do the hard work of creating it. So I appreciate that you did that.
Thank you.
So part of the reason that we're having this conversation is, we run a marketing company. And so for ourselves and for our clients, we talk a lot about communication, how you should be talking to consumers, how you should be talking to your team. And, obviously with the racial issues boiling up in our country that have been there for, since the beginning for the entire history of our country, but now they're starting to bubble up again. And I think a lot of people now are saying, like, we can't let this keep happening, right? Mm-hmm. It's just too many times it's boiled up, and then we've just kind of tucked it under the rug and said, yeah, it's fine. And so I've been very honest about my ignorance around this topic and just saying, man, I need to dig in and understand a little bit more so that I can have something intelligent to say, because I don't even feel like I do at the moment. And so one of the phrases that I've heard quite a few times and I've come across is the term implicit bias. And so could you elaborate for me and for the audience on what implicit bias is and how you think it affects our perspective of the world?
Sure. Implicit bias is also kind of, it's termed unconscious bias. And it's basically suggesting that, people can act on the basis of prejudice and stereotypes without really even like intending on doing so. Yeah. So it's like one of those things that's in the back of our minds, but and it comes out in some way, shape, or form. So that's actually part of a lot of my trainings. We actually do specialize specifically, in implicit bias training. And usually when I do my workshops and things of that nature, I start everything off as in everybody in here has a prejudice of some sort. And if we don't bring that to the forefront, then it's going to come out in one way or another. Yeah. And that's where implicit bias and unconscious bias comes in. People don't even know that sometimes that they're doing it. And that, and sometimes it's malicious and sometimes people are just flat out ignorant. But ignorance, hey, we have to address it. If you're not realizing or understanding what you're doing, how do you know? So what, my program, we are designed to take that ideology of ignorance. And again, that's why we educate. And implicit bias can be a very dangerous thing. It can hurt people's feelings. It can make people feel less than, even if that person who has the bias isn't intending on doing so. So again, this is on so many levels, diversity education and cultural appropriation training and implicit bias training is so essential. And that's why I like to highlight the mindfulness-based approaches, because being mindful is meaning that you're being aware and you're being aware of self. And that's a big part of diversity education that I don't feel is highlighted enough. It's like, we're talking about diversity. Everybody thinks it's all sunshine and rainbows. Let's hold hands. Nah, it's not that at all. As we see in our country right now, It's very significant and it's a problem. And we have to be honest about that. And we have to be real with ourselves. And if we're not willing to have the conversation, then you're doing yourself a disservice and you're closing yourself off to the issues that are needed to be discussed. So, you know, it's imperative and it's important to have that mindfulness-based approach when you're talking about diversity and diversity-related issues.
Yeah, I love that. I think that though, you know, you and I are both on the same page with this, but just having conversations with people, because I think with implicit bias, if you're not made aware of it, it seems like it's something, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's something very difficult to figure out on your own, just by the nature of it, right? Unconscious bias. It's something very difficult to figure out on your own. But one of the easiest ways it seems to figure that out is to have conversations, right? Because it's absolute. I mean, much easier. You could have a 10-minute conversation with me and you could point out an implicit bias or an unconscious bias that I had for years and it would have never been on my radar, right? So those conversations, I think, are just absolutely critical.
For sure. And, you know, we talked about, you know, dialogue, you know, and also it's active listening, right? So, you know, in therapy and counseling, my job is to be an active listener to the person that I'm, you know, I'm counseling. If I'm not hearing them, then I'm going to miss something. So I have to be attentive. I have to be in the moment with them. And I think that's where we're having issues at in America and in the world. I mean, really, we're not in the moment. We're thinking about something that happened maybe about 10 minutes ago, an hour ago, a year ago, 10 years ago, or we're thinking about what's going to happen a year from now, 10 years from now. And we forget about this moment that we're in. And this moment is so beautiful and it's so important. And if we could just be in there with one another, we can show so much more. We can display levels of respect towards one another. We can hear a person. And I always say this, we need to listen, not to respond, but to listen to understand. And that's where this is getting, I think, as I like to say, lost in the sauce. We're not listening to understand our brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I love that. Man, that is so true. The listening to respond versus listening to understand, right? Like everybody is listening so that they can then counter your point or agree with it either way, instead of just taking in what you said and truly understanding it. That's awesome.
That's it. Most definitely. And we need to apply that to, and you can apply that anywhere. I mean, it's, you know, in schools, in businesses, organizations, you know, and obviously in the, you know, in any setting that you're really in, active listening is a big part of you know, what's necessary. Like if you're in a business or an organization, you have to listen to what your consumers are wanting and you have to deliver, you know what I mean? So it's applicable on so many levels. Yeah. And I don't think we do enough of it. And that's what, you know, I want to bring to the table. That's what I am bringing to the table with OpenedEyes and our program. Yeah. Awesome. Sean, you jumped in, so I feel like we have some questions for Brandon.
Yeah, we have a couple questions, and I wanted to get to them before we got too far along. So you started talking about some work with counseling. Someone was asking, Tracy Daly asked, what's your area of specialty in counseling? And then Cora was asking.
Well, let's cover that one first, and then we'll.
Okay, yeah. Sure, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm a journalist practitioner. You know, it's pretty broad. I work as a suicide prevention coordinator currently, and so I've been doing that for, you know, about 4 years, and but yeah, more of just a generalist. LPC is what they call us. So yeah, that's what that is. So I've been in therapy, you know, doing this for like, 7 years or so. So I used to be a behavioral specialist, consultant, mobile therapist. So I was my focus was children and adolescents for a period of time. And now I work with the veteran population, which is awesome.
Awesome, man. You're doing a lot of deep, important work, man. I love it.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think we had another question. There we go.
Yeah, Cora. So, and this is a really interesting question. I would like to ask Brandon what he would recommend for families who are trying to stop this from continuing into the next generation.
This one is emotional for me because, you know, I have a 2-year-old son. And so it's important for me to, you know, when I doing this work, he's like one of my main driving forces. And so I think about him and the next generation of that are being raised up. And, you know, I think about, you know, I was marching a couple of weeks ago for, you know, a peaceful protest rally. And, you know, I just was thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, they were doing this. how many years ago, you know, for same social justice related issues.
Yep.
And now here we are again, still fighting the same fight. And I thought up to myself, like, wow, I want to be able to be a voice so that, you know, my son, you know, can come into a better world and grow up in a better world than I came into. The fact of the matter is, though, I have to be realistic, is that we're always going to experience these type of things. And it's sad that it's to that point, but I don't want to say sad. I don't want to be pessimistic. We have to be optimistic as well, but also, you know, realistic. I think it's just educating. You know, the more that we talk about these things and not sweep it under the table, the better off we're going to be. We can't just, and I think that's the problem, you know, when we become complacent with social justice related issues and we just sweep it on the table like it doesn't exist, all it does is build up. I mean, that's what you do. If you continue to put dust under a you know, a mat, it's going to build up, and eventually it's gonna trickle out. You know, so we have to address the issues. We have to clean it up, and it takes time, and it takes patience, and again, utilizing skills of active listening and communication. We have to be real with our families, and this is important too. We have to. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, red, purple, whatever. Everybody has the ability to talk about diversity-related issues. Years ago, I did an event, and I'll never forget this. It was an art gallery event for kids, and we invited the families to come in, and we had these kids submit pictures. Basically, it's called the What Are You Art Gallery event, and we had the kids basically draw what they look like, how they viewed themselves, I know what they're made of, and you know, the people drew dancers or music. You know, it was beautiful. It just went so beyond what it was. And this woman came up to me, white woman, and she said, "I love the idea of diversity. I love the concept, and I think it's so important to talk about, but how do I talk about it? You know, who am I? I'm just a white woman." And I'm like, stop right there. Who are you not to talk about it? If you're not talking about it, you know, how is your family dynamic going to be more aware of it? How are you going to teach your children this? How are they going to be aware? So educate yourself first, understand your prejudices, understand your biases, because we all have them. And then once we are able to be real with ourselves, we can help this generation. We can help our family unit. And that's where it starts. And that's important. That's a great question.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we have 4 kids, my wife and I. That was my wife that asked the question. And, you know, that's something that we're trying to figure out is like, how can I educate my kids on something that I'm ignorant about? So like I have a duty.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, obviously a broader duty on the macro level to society, but like my first duty is to educate myself and my kids so that when they are going into the world, they're not spreading the same ignorance that I could have been spreading. I don't even know. Right. So that's, right. You know, we're digging in and trying to figure out how to do that the right way. So
absolutely. Well, it's great that you guys are actively doing that. That's important. You know, it's we have to take the initiatives. We have to step out of our comfort zone. That's the only way we're going to grow.
Agreed, man.
Yeah, in that, so we had another question come in that light. What we were talking about implicit bias earlier. So what kinds of things can we look for, or like what questions do we need to be asking ourselves to help identify where those things exist?
Sure. You know, and I think that's, and this is actually great. And I'm going to give an example here, if I can. One of my trainings that I did, probably about a year or so ago, I did it at the university level, and you know, I was discussing implicit bias, and I was talking about, you know, again, ways to, you know, just the ways to understand your biases. And we were just talking, and this woman, she stood up in the back, and white woman, and she said, "I was on the phone with some customer service, you know, representatives or whatever." And she's like, as we're talking about implicit bias, she was like, "I remember that phone call that I had, and the person had broken English." And she was like, and I just got so, I became so ticked off, you know what I mean? And she's like, and then I was just like, why do all these people have to come over here and take these jobs? And why do all these people have to be on these phone calls? I can't even understand them. And then she started to think about it. She was like, wow, like talking about this, it brought to her attention that, wow, I do have these unconscious biases. And what you can do to look for ways to challenge it, again, is to get involved with, you know, get some diversity education, get some, you know, attend some trainings, attend some workshops, you know, talk to friends who or not even friends, but people might be different from you. It never hurts to talk, you know, in dialogue. And I know people will get scared about that. And I understand, because people can be very tense with the topic, but, you know, you miss 100% of the shots and you don't shoot. you know. So if you don't know, if you don't ask, you're not going to know. And so it is about educating yourself. And hey, we have a great platform in our day and age, social media. And it's about Googling and understanding the history and understanding implicit biases a little bit more. You know, you can research it, you can challenge yourself, you can have conversations and little group meetings about, you know, hey, just having conversation about, you know, cultural appropriation or, you know, implicit bias, just discussing it with other people, getting other people's thoughts and perceptions. Because again, you know, we have to challenge our own ignorance. And if we're not, we're going to stay in our bubble and we're not going to grow. And that's problematic. And we all have to do that. That's not just one person. It's not just one race. It's not just one ethnicity. It's not just one of anything. It's all of us. And it's important for us to be mindful of that. So for you, Diane, just asking that question is a huge step, believe it or not. And it's great that you're having that self-reflective mindset. And I want you to take that and I want you to continue to ask more questions and research and challenge your own prejudices. It's key. You have to take those steps though too.
Yeah. One of the things I've been just personally doing some kind of self-reflection and really trying to build self-awareness around is when am I using words where I'm putting people in groups, regardless of what the group is, right? Because I'm like,
right,
people are never groups, right? Every group is made up of a bunch of individuals. And as soon as you say, why are those people or why is that group, regardless of what the group is, right? Like it can be Republican, Democrat, like it doesn't matter. Like as soon as you're putting people into a group, you're saying, okay, I know exactly what all of those people think, believe, understand, and we just don't, right? Like we're all individuals. So it's for me again, and I could be wrong in doing that, but I'm trying to figure out like where am I saying like that group or those people or whatever it might be when and again, not just in race, but in everything, to say like it's not a group, they're individuals, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, that's like that categorization, you know, that stereotyping and that categorizing. Yeah. Like we had those general statements, like all police officers are racist, or all black people are thugs, or all white people are snotty, you know, all of these stereotypes and you know, and we do it to ourselves, you know, and we allow media to and it's not political propaganda in the sense of one party is more reliable than the other. We see it from both liberal and conservative. And and I'm not getting political, but what I'm saying is that too often we are like robots and like yes men and women, and we don't think for ourselves, and we allow other people and other outlets to dictate things for us, and then we become divided. And it's like, that's not the way that we're going to do it. That's not how we're going to solve our issues moving forward. We have to have these tough conversations. We have to have them. If we're not, then, you know, again, like I said, you're doing yourself a disservice. And I'll tell you what, like, racism is real. I've experienced it. I know it's there. You can't tell me nothing else behind it. It's real, and it hurts, and it makes people angry. And I've been angry a lot of times in my life. It's just now I'm at a place in my life where I'm able to direct my anger and to be more productive. And I want to educate. And this is where I put my energy into. And this is why I do what I do with OpenedEyes. And this is why I have to shout out my whole OpenedEyes team, because if I didn't have them, you know, I have such like-minded individuals that love this message and they want this out there. And there's some great people. And I you know, I wish I could have them all right here with me right now, because it's so important, and they're diverse, and that's, you know, I want, you know, again, our mission to reflect that. And I just want to, you know, and I hate to sound like, you know, the Superman Messiah complex, you know, but we just want to help change the world. You know, we have also being realistic that, you know, it's going to be little by little, and there's no one person that can do that. Like, we all have to play our part in that. And I think it's just important. And in order to do that, we have to stop being so damn malicious with one another about this, that, and the third, and just take the time to hear people. Take the time to listen to people's hurt and pain and say, hey, you know what? I had never walked in your shoes before, and I never will, but I'm hearing you, and I respect you, and I love you, and hey, help me understand you more. And then we should have that dialogue back and forth.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
So I'm back.
You're back.
Yeah. People have been talking about like, hey, you know, these are books that I'm reading right now. We also have a couple questions about like, what is the best way that people can support OpenedEyes as they kind of move forward to to really help people navigate this. So yeah, Brandon, anything that you can offer in terms of like resourcing that people should be looking at, books, leaders they should be listening to, and then what specifically can people do to help support OpenedEyes?
Yeah, I mean, oh man, it's there's an abundant amount of resources. I mean, it's literature, even documentaries and movies. I know there's a whole Netflix section called Black Lives Matter, and it's a lot of great history on Black history. Black history is important, and a lot of people don't know a lot about it. And I know that's a topic of discussion too with Black Lives Matter movement and this, that, and the third. And there's a lot of misconceptions about movements in general. And of course there could be bad seeds here and there, and it can mess up, it can taint the movement. But educate yourselves, and like I said, there's an abundant amount of literature. And a book that I loved, and it's not necessarily it's more of a psychology book type. It's called Man's Search for Meaning, and it was a pivotal book for me. The Man's Search for Meaning and the Autobiography of Malcolm X were two books that I remember 6 years ago. I took a vacation to the Virgin Islands. It was beautiful, and I was like, I'm gonna do the whole read on the beach thing, and I did just that. And The Man's Search for Meaning was about Dr. Viktor Frankl, and he was he was in the Holocaust during the time of World War II. And he was a doctor. I believe he was a psychiatrist of some sort, or mental health. I can't remember exactly. But Dr. Viktor Frankl was a remarkable man. And he just basically wrote a book about his time in the concentration camps. Yep. And the struggles and trying to find meaning in life. And I suggest that book because it's more of a universal type. He developed this therapy called logos therapy. And basically it's the therapy of meaning. Finding meaning in your life. And he gave a great description of an individual who was in the camps with him about how important it is to be self-aware and how important it is to have meaning in your life and have purpose in your life. And he talked about this individual, this guy he was in, sharing a room with, kept on having this reoccurring dream that they were going to be freed, by the Americans. And he said, and he had a date in his head, and he said, December 17th, he said, we're going to get free. I had a dream about it. We're going to get freed. So, time went on, months went on, December came around, they weren't freed. 2 days later, that individual died. And Viktor Frankl talked about how having meaning in your life keeps us going, keeps the purpose moving. And and that's so important. And I say that for this conversation because another example of the importance of self-awareness and again, just having purpose in your life and understanding who you are a lot, more, because it's important. If we're going to address racial issues and prejudices, as we've been saying throughout this whole conversation, it's important to understand ourselves in this matter. Yeah. And that's part of diversity too, understanding our diverse selves. And, and certainly, so I highly recommend that book just for self-awareness purposes and mindfulness purposes. And I said the Autobiography of Malcolm X. A lot of people, there's a lot of misconception and a lot of controversy surrounding Malcolm X, but just because of his radical views. But people don't understand the history behind Malcolm X and his trip to Mecca. After he came back from Mecca, he developed a lot more of a peaceful stance and wanted to work across the board a lot more, and he saw in Mecca Muslims of all races, white, black, whatever, all praying together, all being with one another. And he came back with that mentality. And unfortunately, he was assassinated not too long after. So the Autobiography of Malcolm X is really powerful, really great book, especially with Black and African-American history. It's important. And I like to educate people on that. And of course, there's another documentary that I'm going to suggest that I love, especially it's called The Black Panthers, Vanguard of a Revolution. And that is a great depiction of the 1960s Black Panther movement. And again, another misconception with African-American history. The Black Panthers were considered a terroristic group, but that was not the case. Black Panthers were a group that started for equality, and they were not looking for supremacy. And they worked across the board. They worked across the board with Confederate flag wielding country white folk. They worked across the board with Hispanics. They worked with, you know, everybody, and they found a commonality in that. And I think this is, and I want to highlight this point because I think it's important for us right now. And I like to utilize, and I like to talk about the Black Panthers a lot because I appreciated the movement so much. And Fred Hampton, who was one of the rising leaders in the Black Panthers, and he was like 19, 20 years old, but he was the one who was really bridging the gaps with people of different races. He's the one that connected with the Confederate flag, you know, country folk, you know, white folk, and they found a commonality in low socioeconomic status. So they were able to say, hey, we feel we're oppressed. We have a common oppression. And even though they were racist, and they were able to come to a table and talk about their commonalities, and they were able to talk about their prejudices too, to the point where these individuals were like, you know what, we're going to stop our messages of hate. We're going to stop that. We're going to work with the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers are going to work with this. And they came together for a common goal, and they found something. And we all have a commonality, no matter what race you are. And I think that's the other part of bridging the gap and talking about things and making things a little bit more comfortable is finding common ground with one another and having that human connection. And human connection is so important. And like I said, even in therapy, having that face-to-face contact with someone, seeing their body language, recognizing, hearing them, and rephrasing, paraphrasing what they're saying, that is also important. And we find common grounds. I've counseled many people who are complete opposite of me and completely different views. And I have to be there in a moment with them. I can't just dismiss what they're saying because I don't agree with some of their views. I have to be there for them. I have to help them out. So, and you know, we find that I meet them where they're at. We work together, and then we rise up. And that's the biggest thing that we need to remember is we need to find that common ground. We need to meet each other where we're at, and we need to go up from there together.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
And I'm sorry, I don't think I answered the question too. Best way you can help OpenedEyes, of course, is our website. I don't know if I didn't send you this, Josh, but our website is www.opened-eyes.com. Our Facebook page is OpenedEyes, just one word. Our Instagram is OE_what are you? And so just, you know, we are going to be posting, we've been posting, you know, just educational stuff, and we are getting ready to revamp and do so many great educational programming with a lot of different organizations that have been reaching out to us. So we're going to be flooding your social media accounts in a good and positive way. And we want to be accessible and used as a resource in the Erie area, not just the Erie area, but my goal is to go nationwide. Like I want my program to hit everywhere. Like that's the best that we can do. So just to support, to share our content, to ask questions, to volunteer. We are always wanting to bring people on to help with events, also to train you in, you know, our OpenedEyes curriculum. That's important too. And it's an educational thing, something that you can put on your resume and help build up for yourself. And but yeah, workshops, trainings, you know, we are going to be doing all that, and we just want people to support us, to reach out to us for help and assistance, and in any way that we can be a support to them. That's what we're here for.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll put all of that, the links to all of your social media channels, website in the chat. We'll also put it in. We send a weekly email out on Monday. You can sign up at ghostcreative.com/live to get that weekly email, and we'll put all the resources in there too. So Brandon, we'll probably reach out to you again and just get, you know, other books, other resources. We'll keep the dialogue going so we can keep including resources around these issues in the emails that we're sending out. Awesome. And I have so many more questions for you. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So I hope this was valuable for people. I know that this conversation has to happen. You're talking about dialogue. I would love to be able to continue this dialogue. And I talked to you about it, you know, before the show started, but I'll just mention it here too. If this was valuable, and if people are finding it valuable from your end, from my end, I know people will. We would love to be able to have you back as a kind of a recurring guest to make sure that this conversation doesn't just get swept under the rug. That I don't want this to be we had the conversation one time. I know that there's so many business owners, myself included, that have so much to learn around this issue, that, you know, we could have you on, we could have you on for the next 8 weeks and we're still just scratching the surface. But yeah, I would love to have you back and keep this conversation going, because it's so important and there's so much education to be had around it. Yeah, so I'm thankful for you and your team. We'll be reaching out to you because we definitely want to hire you guys to come in and train our team on this stuff. Could you, just on a very practical note, before we jump out of here, what services? So as a business owner, when I say, hey man, I don't know where to get started, how do I go about, like, can we hire you to come in and just train us? What does that look like? And how would people take the very next step down that path? I want people, while it's top of mind now, to go out and do this and get the ball rolling.
Sure. Well, I think we need to be very practical. We have pre and post assessments. I mean, I know I'm kind of getting a little, clinical here, but
you're good.
Evidence-based practices are the best practices. So
yep.
We first want to know what your needs are. And if you don't know what those needs are, we schedule like consultations, and of course we could do Zooms, and we can just kind of talk about these things a little bit further. You know what I mean? Of course, I get tons and tons of emails about, hey, I want diversity trainings. Okay, well that's a big right. Broad thing to say, and that's fine because people don't know, and that's okay. So what we've been doing is we've been offering people basically like consultation to discuss what their needs are. And once we're able to do that, we'll send like a needs assessment to that particular organization to have them fill out. And from there, we get those results and we say, okay, we see where we're going with this. So we basically look at our curriculum. And again, as I said, our curriculum is very fluid and very multifaceted. So I'm able to take what we have and I can formulate it, and it's fluid to meet the needs of the particular organization. So for instance, like if it's a school and they're saying that we have a race issue here, okay, we're going to talk about elements of peer relationships. We're going to talk about elements of implicit biases. We're going to kind of morph all that together and kind of tailor it to meet the needs. So it's almost like a tailored suit. We're going to tailor it to meet that specific organizational or educational need.
Awesome. So guys, I want to leave you with this. I think that, I want to be very clear about something. Every business needs to be going through this type of training. And too often, and I'll speak for myself, we're a very small business. I've worked for, Fortune 500 companies, and they all have their handbook and they all have their PR practices. This cannot be a PR issue, right? This is not a PR issue. This is an emotional issue. This is a human issue where we actually, I don't care if you're the only person in your business, right? You're a sole proprietor. You need to understand this stuff so you can better communicate with your clients, with the consumer. Again, we're a marketing company. We talk a lot about communication. And so this is not something that's reserved for the education system, for big businesses. Everybody needs to understand this stuff. And we can't say that we're passionate about the issue. I'll just be real. We can't say we're passionate about the issue and go and post on Facebook and say that we are, and not really dig in and get some training around this stuff. We just can't do both, right? If you're passionate about it, if you're serious about it, get some training, start to understand it, have conversations, have dialogue. We got to really dig in, guys. This is something that's gonna, as Brandon mentioned, it's not gonna be fixed overnight, and it's gonna take a lot of work. We have to dig in and do the work. That's just where we are.
I appreciate you saying that, Jay, and that's important. I just want to highlight what you said before too. It can't just be one conversation. It can't just be one training. I really want to piggyback off that and highlight that this has to be an ongoing thing. And that's what I've been telling organizations. Like, yeah, you could, like you said, check the box. That's cool. But what is really your mission here? What are your intentions? Are you doing it just because? No, we need to continue the conversation.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, we're past time already. Again, I could talk to you all day, but I know that we try to keep it on schedule as close as we can. I really appreciate not just you taking the time today, but I can't imagine the amount of hours and effort you've put into OpenedEyes and that your team has put into it.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to what you guys have coming down the pipeline, and we're going to keep the conversation going as well. Guys, we will send out the resources in the email so that you guys can get in touch with OpenedEyes, get in touch with Brandon. Really take some time to think about this, take some time to dig in. This is too important to just have a conversation and move on, guys. So take some time, really dig in here. This is a deep conversation for a Friday, but that's okay because we're adults here. So we can have deep conversations even on Fridays. So, guys, I hope you have a great weekend. Brandon, thanks again. And we hope to see you guys on Tuesday at 9 a.m. for another Caffeinated Q&A. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.